chapter 6 to 18, chapter 6 to 18, that means the majority of Revelation, 6 to 18, that is about 12 chapters now, talks about three things mainly. What are them? Judgments. And that judgments are described with the three terms. Three terms. Seal judgment, trumpet judgment, bowl judgment. Right? Bowls judgment. So you have seal judgment, trumpet judgment, bowl judgments. The three judgments are there. Now, as you read, the question is, what is the order of this judgment? Like, okay, so that means, okay, you have seal judgment first, trumpet judgment second, bowl judgments third. Like, first you have 7 seals, then 7 trumpets, then 7 bowl judgments, right? 7 seals judgment, 7 trumpet judgment, 7 bowl judgment. So all these things are going to be like, okay, first seal judgments will be over, then trumpet judgment will begin, then it is over, then the bowl judgment will begin and it is over. Is that the way we should look at, or some other way this book or John actually says? So, so here in this notes, these judgments are presented as occurring in sequence with the 7th seal judgment, incorporating the 7 trumpet judgments and the 7th trumpet judgment incorporating the 7 bowl judgments. So how we are going to see, or how this is actually, this, we are going to see is the sequential. How? Maybe if I say, as I read and tell you, it may be a little difficult to understand. So what I have done, I've given a picture. That picture will give you more clarity on how you should look at this judgment. All right, so I'm going to go down and see if I can show you that picture. Yes, right. This is a sequential. All right, by the way, are you able to see? Are you able to see my picture here?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes.
All right. So you have 7 seals judgment, 7 trumpets judgment, 7 bowls judgment, right? 3 judgment, or 3 names, or 3 grouping kind of, and everything has got 7. But what is the order when we say sequential? It actually, seals judgment 1, 2. So in chapter 6, you have this seals judgment, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 7th seal, when the 7th seal is broken, or that 7th seal judgment, then it explains the next 7th trumpet judgment, right? So trumpets judgments are part of the 7 seal judgment, right? Trumpet judgments are part of the 7th seal judgment. Similarly, right? Similarly, the bowls judgment are part of the 7th trumpet judgment, right? seventh trumpet judgment. So that is what sequential order. Now, why we take that way? Why we take that way? So we have excursus here. We'll look at that one first. The chronological arrangement of the seal, trumpet, and bowls judgments. The question with the 3 series of 7 judgments is whether to take 3 series of judgments as sequential, the second series following chronologically the first, and the third series following the second, or to take 3 series of judgments as recapitulating the second and third series overlapping the chronology of the first series of judgment. So that is the question to be asked, right? Is it sequential or is it recapitulation, right? So let's look at the commentators who, there are some people think, no, this is recapitulation. Now, we may ask, oh, what is that? Let's look at. According to some commentators, they say, 6th seal, right? What is the 6th seal? Look at chapter 6 now. Chapter 6, verse 12 to 17. Can one of you read chapter 6, verse 12 to 17? Anyone? I want you to read. Revelation chapter 6, verse 12 to 17.
I looked when he opened the 6th seal.
All right, wait a second. So here is the opening of the 6th seal. Go ahead.
And behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black and sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. And the stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave and every free man, hide themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath come, and who is able to stand.
All right. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand. So the argument is the 6th seal, that is verse 12 to 17 of chapter 6, appears to be describing events that occur at the end of the tribulation period and cannot therefore have an additional 2 series of 7 judgment following. If those verses refer to incidents that possibly taking place at the end of the tribulation, now you are saying there are 2 more judgments of 7 groupings had to follow. That doesn't make a sense, right? Because this is like end of the tribulation period. Specifically, the severity of the 6th seal judgment would seem to render all subsequent judgments anticlimactic, if not superfluous, because this is by looking at this verse, it is really end. So then again, 2 more groupings of judgments are to come, like trumpet judgments and bowls judgment have to come again. No, that is not going to be right. So that is the first argument. So such passages such as Matthew 24, 29 to 31. Yes, in Gospel of Matthew 24, we see, but immediately after the tribulation of those days, sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky. So Matthew 24 clearly tells the end of the tribulation is the time sun will be darkened, moon will not give light. And 2 Peter chapter 3 also says, the day of the Lord will come like a thief, in which heavens will pass away and roar. That also address the end time events associated with the Lord's return and describe similar phenomena as recorded with sixth seal judgment. As such, these passages add support for placing sixth seal judgment at the end of tribulation period in conjunction with the return of Christ. So they say Matthew chapter 24 and 2 Peter chapter 3 also tells us that what you read in chapter 6 verse 12 to 17, that is the sixth seal, is actually the end of the present world. So that is the second argument. Now, third argument for them, those who say recapitulate the first sixth, seventh judgment in the sixth, the seal judgment, you see, that is from the beginning to the end, and the other judgments are recapitulating. That is what the argument. So for them, the third argument is this: chapter 11, verse 15 to 19 includes statements like the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he will reign forever. So that is this, that verse comes chapter 11 verse 15 to 19. It comes in the seventh trumpet judgment. Yeah, the second grouping of judgment. Remember, seals, trumpet, and bowl judgment. So these three has got seven, and so in the trumpet, the last trumpet, that is the seventh trumpet, you have the verse such as the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ. That means seventh trumpet itself tells the kingdom kind of begun, which indicates that it too comes at the end of the tribulation period and cannot have series of judgment following. There is again seven bowl judgment following that, cannot have. They argue further in chapter 10 verse 6 to 7. An angel declares that the seventh trumpet, this is what we read in chapter 10, there will be delay no longer. That means there's not going to be delayed anymore. And mystery of God is finished. And chapter 11, verse 17 to 18, seventh age specifically states, the seventh trumpet, Christ begins its reign and the dead are judged. Right? So you have taken, you have great power, have begun to reign, and your wrath has come. The time came from the dead to be judged. So they say, seventh trumpet itself, kingdom is ready to begin. So then you are saying seven more judgments to follow, one piece, right? So the seismic and ecclesiastical disturbance mentioned in the sixth seal and the seventh trumpet and the seventh bowl argue that they are describing the same event, and therefore all three should be placed at the end of the tribulation. So what is recapitulation theory actually says? All right, now by looking at this picture, recapitulation theory, let me see, 1 second, let me see if we can. I'm trying to look at I can't get anything. No, it doesn't come up with anything. Okay. Okay. What is recapitulation theory actually says is this. Here in this picture, if you can see my picture, I have said, yes, the trumpet judgments are part of the seventh seal. Ball's judgment are part of the seventh trumpet. But if it is recapitulation, so what should happen? It is not this way, rather, it should come under this, right here. See if I can. Yes. So the trumpet judgment should be like that. Ball's judgment should be like that. And means, oh, sorry, okay. This is what recapitulation theory actually says. That is, you need to put this one, the one comes right here, and this one. So that means you put one here, you put second trumpet here, third trumpet here, first ball judgment here, second ball judgment here, third ball judgment here, fourth judgment ball here, and so it comes like that. So that's what recapitulation. Same thing with a different name, right? The same 7 judgments, different name, right? So there are 7 judgments actually. It is known as seals judgment. Same thing is known as trumpet judgment. Same is the balls judgment. So that is what a recapitulation theory actually is. All right. So I hope you understood what is this recapitulation theory of the book of Revelation. How commentators think recap. No, I don't think that is right. I think it is wrong. I believe sequential. It is sequence, right? So, but recapitulation theory should look like that. Same thing repeats and repeats. All right. Now let's go to now how do I do? See if I can. Okay. Now the arguments for sequential. So first we looked at the arguments for recapitulation. Now let's look at the argument for sequential. Both sides agree that the 3 series of judgment are presented in a literary or narrative sequence, right? It is a literary or narrative sequence. There is it's a literary specific literary types, and it is written in a sequential form. Specifically, 7th seal initiates 7 trumpets. Yeah. So that is what sequential group, people who believe in sequential theory of interpreting Revelation believe that 7th seal initiate 7 trumpets judgment. And 7th trumpet initiates 7 balls judgment. Taken at face value, this literary narrative sequence would seem to demand a chronological sequence as well. If there is no chronological sequence, then there is in effect no 7th seal judgment, nor the 7th trumpet. So there is a chronology, no doubt. Even those who believe in sequential understanding of this judgment believe that there is a chronology for the events. The 3 series of seals, trumpets, and balls depict judgment that increase in severity, right? So For example, the second series of judgments are more severe than the first. And the third, that is bowl judgment, is more severe than the second. So the third is more severe than the second. For example, if you look at for example, the second trumpet judgment involves destruction of 1/3 of all sea life. Look at with me, chapter 8. Yeah, you have the Bible? Come to chapter 8, verse 8 and 9. Chapter 8, verse 8 and 9. One of you please read.
Then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed.
Yes. So what do you see? Second angel sounded his trumpet. Right? So 7 trumpets were being sounded. Here is a second, and a third of the sea turned into blood. A third of living creatures in the sea died. A third of the ships were destroyed. Right? Now, this is trumpet judgment. But when it comes to the bowl judgment, come to chapter 16, verse 3. Chapter 16, verse 3, where you read bowl's judgment, right? Chapter 16, verse 3. Let's look at verse 3. 16:3.
Then the second angel poured out his bowl on the sea, and it became blood as a dead man, and every living creature in the sea died.
Yes, here what you see the difference is severity increased. In the bowl judgment, every living creatures in the sea is now died. If it was in the trumpet judgment, only 1/3 is dead. Right now here, everything is dead. So yes, severity is increased in this judgment from seal to trumpet to bowl. 7 bowl judgment are specifically identified as the 7 last judgments. Yes. So if you look at chapter 15, verse 1, yes, 15 verse 1, I saw in heaven another great marvelous sign, 7 angels with the 7 last plagues. Lost, because with them God's wrath is complete. So that's introduction of 7 bowls judgment, known as last judgment. So with these 7 bowls judgment, the wrath of God is finished and brought to an end, unless the other 2 series precede the bowl judgment. In what sense are these judgments considered to be the last? And also the statement at the end of 16:17, the connection with the pouring out of the 7th bowl judgment, right? Look at 16:17. You are in Revelation, right? Let's go to 16 verse 17, chapter 16, verse 17. Let's look at, yes, let's read that verse. Can you read? 16:17.
Then the 7th angel poured out of his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, "It is done."
It is done, right? So here you have 7th angel with the bowl. So 7 bowl judgments. This is the last one. 7th one, when it is poured, it says it is done. All right, so that's the last one. Now, so the consequential theory clearly says these judgments are seal, comparing seal judgment to trumpet judgment. Trumpet judgments are severe in nature. Comparing to trumpet judgment to bowl judgments are severest in nature. And Bible also clearly says these bowls judgment are the last judgments. Fourth point argument for argument why it is consequential. Neither Matthew 24 or 2 Peter 3 are valid cross references for the sixth seal judgment. The others took that verse to argue their case. But, for example, Matthew 24:29 specifically states events mentioned takes place there after the tribulation judgment. This is after. And 2 Peter 3:10 specifically mentions the creation of the new heavens and the earth at the end of the millennium. On the other hand, Matthew 24:3-8 lists events in the first half of the tribulation period that offer a number of parallels with the seal judgment generally, and the sixth seal judgment specifically. Actually, Matthew 24:3-8 is a first half of the tribulation. Then you see, maybe after 15, then you see the second part follows. So these parallels argue for placing the sixth seal judgments in the first half of the tribulation. Right? For example, the sixth seal judgment taking place at the midpoint of tribulation, not the end of the tribulation. So it's much more not recapitulation, but consequential, chronological consequential is what we see if you really look into this one. Fifth argument, why? All right, the fifth argument, or sixth argument, lastly, the seismic and celestial disturbances. Okay. Yes. Because that. Seismic and celestial disturbance mentioned with the several of the judgments do not require that these judgments to be concomitant. In other words, similarity does not demand identity. For example, the riders in the both second and fourth seal judgments are given authority to kill with a sword. Yet, differences in the second and fourth seal judgment argue for two distinctive judgments. Likewise, both sixth and seventh seal judgments mention earthquakes. Yet, as before, straightforward reading of the text argues that two distinct judgments are in view. If you look at the text, yes, it is different judgments. So similarity doesn't mean it is same, identical. Yes, the judgments, there are similarities, but it's not identical. So what the conclusion here is this: the evidence favors taking three series of judgments as chronologically sequential, right? Chronologically sequential. So that means what are we to say? Yes, seventh seal opens for seventh trumpet judgment. And seventh trumpet offers for bowl judgment, but it's not, it is then that means it takes place chronologically. Bowls judgments are the last one, seals judgments are the beginning, and finally, when the seventh bowl judgment is completed, the judgment is done, completed. So that is what we need to learn as we look at this one. All right, so we are beginning chapter 6 here, and all right, so I said, so we looked at that one. The seven seal judgment take place in the first half of the 7-year tribulation period. So you have seals judgment. The 7 will take place in the first half. The entire 7 period represents Daniel 70th week. So chapter 6 to chapter 18, what do you read is actually what is recorded in the 70th week of Daniel, right? Daniel prophesied 70 weeks for the restoration of Israel, right? And 69th week time, Daniel says the anointed one will be cut off. Then there is 1 week remaining. That is known as the 70th week, which is not yet fulfilled because it talks about Antichrist, right? And he's making a treaty with Israel and breaking that treaty, and the abomination of desolation will be standing on that holy place in Jerusalem, in that temple. And Jesus looked at them. Jesus says, yes, what Daniel prophesied is about tribulation period. Jesus said in Matthew 24. Clearly, Jesus pointed out, yes, this is the tribulation period. So, Daniel chapter 9, verse 20 to 27 describe 70th week, right? Which is a 7-year period, 7-year tribulation. And that 7 year is what going to happen in from chapter 6 to 18. Now, in the Old Testament, this period is known as the time of Jacob's trouble. That's what Jeremiah said. Time of Jacob's trouble. That means Israel's trouble. So Israel has no trouble until this time. So no trouble is going on now. No, this is not anything what is described in the Bible. Don't be fooled by that. Oh, okay, there is war is going on, so tribulation is began or something. Bible is going, whatever said in the Bible is being fulfilled now. And don't buy all those arguments, right? This is talking about a particular time period. This week may be divided into 2 parts: 3.5 years or 42 months each. According to Matthew 24:8, yeah, the first half of the tribulation is called the beginning of sorrows, or sometimes we read the beginning of birth of pangs. There will be wars, famine. That's not talking about today. It's talking about the first half of tribulation. And the last half, according to Matthew chapter 24, verse 21, Jesus says it's going to be the great tribulation. So there is a period of sorrow, a period of the pain of the birth pain, compared to birth pain, and then a great tribulation, the second period that follows. All right. Another term that we can look at in our class notes about the DOL, Day of the Lord. DOL. So if you read DOL, what does that mean? It's a short form of Day of the Lord. It's found this reference, right? So the expression frequently associated with the tribulation is the Day of the Lord, found both in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. It refers primarily, if not exclusively, to the eschaton. It involves the divine judgment and divine blessing. Yes, Day of the Lord refers to both judgment and blessing. According to chapter 2, according to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, eschatological day of the Lord begins after the rapture of the church, right? But around that time, and in a connection with unparalleled religious apostasy of that time and the arrival of the Antichrist. So the day of the Lord begins right after the rapture, when there will be unparalleled religious apostasy known by the covenant with Israel at the beginning of the 70th week that Daniel is the Antichrist is going to make. And according to 2 Peter chapter 3, it culminates in the eternal state. What culminates? The day of the Lord. And so it is a period of judgment and blessing, begins after rapture, and it goes all the way till the end of the millennial kingdom, right? The beginning of the eternal state. So the expression can be used of the period of divine judgment and blessing, or either the blessing or sometimes judgment alone. So you need to look at those verses clearly. What does it really says? Look at the context, whether it is talking about only judgment, sometimes yes, only blessing, sometimes yes, sometimes it is mixed. So in the latter sense of divine judgment, it coincides with the tribulation period. As such, it is true, can be used of the entire 7-year tribulation, or the last half, in which the expression, the great and terrible day is found. See, so I have the explanation for that. You are there. So that is what the day of the Lord. Now, as you read these chapters, so please go ahead and read chapter 6, 7, and 8 for, when you, today, when you get time, see to it, read through it. 7 seal judgments appear to be divided into 2 groups. Yeah? If you really look at these 7 judgments, known as seal judgments, divided into 2 groups. First of all, involves horsemen. The scene is the earth. And judgments somewhat providential in nature. So it is earth. Judgments are connected to God's providential work. The last 3 involves no horsemen. No horsemen. The scene includes both the heaven and earth. And the judgments entail more direct divine intervention. And somewhat miraculous nature of the last 3 are more evident. So if you look at the 3 judgments that are, for example, 5, 6, and 7 are much more miraculous in nature, the judgment, whereas the first 4 are providential in judgment, right? And of course, the seal judgment involves some aspect of symbolism that we did look at. And so read through, maybe there is white horse, right? Let's look at maybe, when you read chapter 6 of Revelation, let me show you. Yes, look at verse 2 of chapter 6. Chapter 2, this is chapter 6, verse 2. I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow. So there is a white horse and a rider. So who is this rider on a white horse? So there is a misunderstanding on the part of many people. Many people think that this is Jesus Christ, right? Many interpretations of the rider. The rider is Christ based on the similarity of Revelation 19. Yes, Jesus is coming on a white horse. People think that this is Jesus Christ. But understand, Christ is the one opening the seal. It's not Christ. The second option, some people say it is they represent the gospel, Matthew 24:14, which in the tribulation context where the gospel goes forth throughout the earth. And the third option is the writer personifies the forces of Antichrist. I think it represents Antichrist. The other writers are negative judgments, and this probably should be as well. So yes, what is its white horse and the absence of arrows with its rider suggests somewhat of a peaceful conquest of the world and warfare beginning in the second seal judgment. So most probably this Antichrist coming to this world with the message of peace and conquering the world, or people are coming under his authority. That is his white horse. So it's not about a reference about Jesus Christ. That's maybe one of the issues to be talked here in chapter 6.